Imagine lying in bed in a pitch-black, suffocatingly warm bedroom late at night. You are just about to drift into a deep, peaceful sleep when suddenly, right next to your ear, you hear it. That agonizing, thin, high-pitched buzz. Your entire body instantly freezes in hypervigilant frustration. You slap the side of your face in the dark, missing completely, only to feel the intense, burning itch of a fresh red welt swelling up on your skin just moments later. It is a universal catalyst for pure, unadulterated human rage. There is arguably no other creature on the face of the planet that commands such absolute, unanimous hatred from the human race. Public opinion is entirely undivided. Mosquitoes are dismissed as dirty, worthless, flying vampires that serve absolutely no purpose other than to inflict misery, ruin outdoor summers, and vector devastating historic diseases that have claimed billions of lives throughout human history. In fact, if you aggregated the global consensus, 99% of the population would gladly press a single catastrophic button to completely erase the entire family from existence, deploying every synthetic chemical, genetic modification, and industrial pesticide available to wipe them off the map forever. We treat them as a monumental evolutionary mistake that needs to be corrected with total eradication. But that aggressive, emotionally driven assumption is a staggering, profoundly uneducated lie. Not even close. That tiny, exasperating buzz vibrating in the darkness is actually one of the structural pillars holding the entire natural architecture of our planet together. While you are plotting their total destruction from your bedroom, the complex web of global ecosystems is relying directly on their immense numbers to function. This insect is not a design flaw. Before you is one of the most critical biological gatekeepers of the wilderness, and if humanity were to successfully execute its dream of total eradication, the resulting ecological domino effect would plunge the planet into a devastating environmental collapse, directly threatening the survival of our own civilization. To truly dissect this global villain, we have to strip away our emotional bias and completely dismantle the biological myth surrounding its existence, because the reality of the mosquito's life is split into a fascinating double standard. When we see this insect, we instantly think of a malicious predator hunting for human blood. But the truth is that the mosquito is actually a highly sophisticated, winged microsyringe engineered for an incredibly peaceful ecological purpose. In fact, if you look at the males of the species, they are absolute, unyielding vegetarians. They do not possess the anatomical tools to pierce skin, nor do they have any interest in doing so. Instead, they spend their entire airborne lives flying from flower to flower, drinking exclusively sugary plant nectar and sweet fruit juices. In doing so, these billions of male insects operate as some of the most critical, hyperproductive pollinators on the face of the planet, stabilizing wild flora, dense forests, and pristine northern ecosystems at a scale that easily rivals the work of wild bees. The terrifying reality of blood feeding is a strict, forced biological necessity reserved entirely for the females, and even then, it is never driven by hunger or malice. A female mosquito does not feed on your blood to sustain her own life. She derives all of her personal metabolic energy from the exact same plant sugars as the males. The blood she extracts from under your skin is treated strictly as an elite, hyper-concentrated package of structural proteins and essential iron components. This heavy chemical payload is a mandatory resource required to kickstart the development of her eggs. The moment you hear that thin, maddening buzz in the dark, you are not listening to a gluttonous parasite looking for a midnight snack. You are witnessing a high-stakes rescue mission conducted by a fiercely self-tempered, dedicated mother executing a dangerous reproductive cycle. She is consciously risking her entire existence, flying directly into a zone dominated by colossal, lethal human hands, purely to secure the vital nutrients needed to guarantee the continuation of her genetic lineage. She navigates an absolute minefield of sudden impacts and chemical defenses, driven entirely by the strict evolutionary code of motherhood. However, this high-stakes aerial operation is just the final, desperate chapter of her life story, because long before she ever deploys her delicate wings to scout the open air, this creature spends its youth navigating a completely hidden, underwater theater of war. This hidden aquatic chapter is where the true, monumental drama of the mosquito's life unfolds long before it ever develops wings, challenging everything we think we know about this insect. The vast majority of a mosquito's existence is spent entirely submerged under the surface of the water, existing as a tiny, frantically writhing creature known as a larva. While surface-dwelling humans only see them as a brief nuisance, these aquatic youngsters operate as a hyperactive army of micro-vacuum cleaners and highly advanced biological water filters. Billions upon billions of these larvae populate stagnant puddles, slow-moving streams, vast northern tundras, and dense wetlands across the globe. Hanging upside down from the water's surface film, they feed continuously by using specialized, rapidly sweeping mouth brushes to generate miniature currents. Through this mechanical motion, they tirelessly process their aquatic environment, consuming massive quantities of suspended organic waste, decaying plant matter, microscopic bacteria, and overgrown single-celled algae that would otherwise suffocate the water. They are the invisible, unceasing sanitation workers of the wilderness, performing the dirty, exhausting labor required to keep fragile wetlands balanced. By locking away massive amounts of carbon and particulate waste inside their own growing tissue, these larvae systematically purify the water column, preventing devastating bacterial blooms and keeping wild ponds clean, oxygenated, and structurally viable for thousands of other aquatic organisms. This underwater lifestyle represents a brilliant evolutionary compromise. The larva acts as a high-capacity ecological filter, converting microscopic, unusable waste into dense, nutrient-rich insect biomass. Without this silent, underwater labor force processing the bottom tiers of the food web, millions of isolated freshwater habitats would rapidly stagnate, turning into toxic, suffocating dead zones devoid of life. Yet, this vital structural maintenance is a deeply hazardous mission, because by performing their daily cleaning duties, these vulnerable larvae inadvertently position themselves as the single most critical nutritional foundation for the rest of the planet's wildlife. And this brings us directly to the terrifying reality of what would happen if humanity actually pulled the trigger and hit the ultimate self-destruct button labeled Erase All Mosquitoes. The moment this massive, multi-billion-dollar dream of total eradication is executed, the global environment does not improve. Instead, a catastrophic, unyielding chain reaction rips through the biosphere at a scale that modern science is entirely terrified to face. The first systemic collapse triggers instantly beneath the surface of our waters. With the immediate disappearance of billions of writhing larvae, the natural aquatic purification lines vanish overnight. Deprived of their relentless mechanical filtering, fragile standing wetlands, vital marshes, and pristine freshwater streams begin to ferment rapidly. Undigested organic debris, runaway algal blooms, and unchecked bacterial sheets quickly consume all available oxygen, transforming vital ecosystems into rancid, suffocating, and deeply toxic dead zones where nothing else can survive. Simultaneously, a massive nutritional famine strikes the surface world with absolute force. Mosquito larvae and their airborne adults constitute the single most concentrated, easily accessible, and calorie-dense food foundation for thousands of migratory species. Hundreds of freshwater fish, delicate amphibians, and insectivorous birds find their primary food supply completely eliminated. The survival crisis peaks with absolute violence in the global northern wilderness. Every spring, billions of migratory birds travel thousands of miles to the Arctic tundra solely to feed their newborn chicks on the massive seasonal explosion of mosquito swarms. Without this reliable, high-protein aerial harvest, entire avian generations would systematically starve to death in their nests, turning the vibrant, singing northern skies completely silent and reducing a thriving landscape to a barren, echoing wasteland. The mosquito operates as a massive, irreplaceable biological pump designed by evolution to transfer millions of tons of rich organic biomass directly from the bottom of isolated waters up onto the open land, fueling the entire global food web. They are the high-volume electrical wiring of the natural world, transferring life-giving energy between isolated biological zones. If you rip this critical wiring out of the planetary engine to satisfy human comfort, the entire mechanical system violently seizes up. The collapse of these basic food chains would ripple outward with devastating speed, eventually destabilizing the larger predatory animals and agricultural systems that humanity directly depends on for its own daily survival. By trying to murder a common vampire, we would inadvertently execute the very caretakers that keep our wilderness alive. When you look at our biosphere through this updated lens, the old narrative surrounding this flying predator completely shatters. The mosquito is not a useless mistake of nature, a dirty biological error, or a mindless parasite designed solely to inflict pain and vector disease. It is a fundamental building block of the entire planetary ecosystem, an irreplaceable aerial pollinator of our wild northern forests, and the architect of our most critical freshwater filter systems. Where our short-sighted, human-centric minds see an offensive, blood-sucking demon, nature recognizes a highly efficient, ancient mechanical engine that drives the global circulation of life-giving nutrients. Without this relentless workforce processing organic waste under the water and transferring massive biological energy up to the land, our planet's pristine wetlands would choke to death on their own rot, while thousands of bird, fish, and plant species would vanish from the face of the Earth forever. Your intense, burning hatred when hearing that high-pitched whine in the dark is a completely natural, deeply hardwired biological response to a historic threat. But before you panic and demand the absolute chemical warfare or total genetic erasure of this entire family, take a deep breath and face the harsh reality of what is truly keeping the wilderness alive. You are looking at a hyper-dedicated, evolutionary marvel, whose underwater larvae serve as the literal natural water treatment facilities for our fragile freshwater ecosystems. They ask for absolutely no recognition, they break no structural laws of balance, and they sacrifice millions of their own lives daily to feed the global food chain. When you hear that thin, maddening buzz on your next summer evening, do not wish for a global eco-apocalypse that would ultimately destroy our own civilization. Protect your skin with repellents, put up sturdy window screens, and use your fly swatters without guilt to guard your home perimeter. But maintain a profound structural respect for the brutal, unforgiving, and deeply calculated laws of evolution. Even the most hated vampire on Earth plays an irreplaceable, elite role in maintaining the fragile equilibrium of our living world. If this intense, high-stakes deep dive completely flipped the script on how you view the deadliest enemies outside your window, hit that like button and subscribe. Nature never designs a permanent structural pillar without an extraordinary mechanical purpose, and sometimes the tiny insect you want to wipe out of existence is the exact anchor holding the entire world together.